Hi, I'm Jay, and this is the first ever Vroom. Yes, I should have picked a better name, and no, you cannot say it after you've had a few beers. On this channel, we're hoping to look at motor vehicles, mostly motorbikes, and just see what's happened in the last 20 years since I was last working on them. Was a bit of a backstreet mechanic, never really knew what I was doing, so this should be fun. Stick around, I'll show you our first project. So here is the project, the first one. Have you guessed what it is yet? It is a 2001 Honda Deauville, my personal bike. I've had this now for about 5 years. Why is this the project? Well, let me just take you down here and you'll see. Ah yes, this bike has been leaking oil constantly since the day I got it, and it just deserves a little bit better. Been a few issues on this bike since I got it, and nothing too major. 5 years ago I got the bike, paid £450 for it, and issues wise it's been brilliant. 2 new tyres, a rear wheel bearing. The starter motor was a major headache. I don't know if any of you guys had this issue before, but this might help you if you have. Used to go places and the starter motor used to just run continuously when you turn the bike off and took the key out. Tried changing the starter solenoid and still had the same issues. What I did in the end was ended up grounding the starter solenoid to the battery, which cured it completely. So there's definitely an earthing problem further down the line with it somewhere. But apart from that, it's been quite good. So this is what we're gonna restore. So how far do we go with it? It's an old bike. It stands me 450 quid, which is superb, but do we powder coat the frame or silver hammerite? Because we know that will last just as long, and you probably don't see a lot of the frame on these particular types of bike. It's done a lot of miles, but like I said, it's been reliable up until those other issues that I mentioned earlier. So exactly how far we do go will be up to you guys. Comment below, let me know what you think. There are other issues with the bike. The paint looks pretty good when you're on camera like this, but on closer inspection some of the paint is flaking off or just looks very tired. So do we wrap it? Is that something that we tend to do with bikes nowadays, or even a respray? Or do I have a go myself? Would you like to see that? I've left this in as one of those learning moments to YouTube. As I mentioned, this was my first ever video, and yeah, first lesson, big one. Do not try and film one-handed while you're trying to undo screws with the other hand, because you look stupid. This is me trying to undo a screw. Isn't it interesting? These are the kind of tips that hopefully will stop me making these mistakes in the future. While this was relevant because it was part of removing the fairings and showing you the hidden screws and the other bits and pieces, it was just silly. How I thought further on down the video I was going to remove the stuff like the petrol tank or even some of the fairings one-handed is beyond me, but you learn. So this was my big first learning curve. And just bring you down on this side, as you can see, is since I've moved the bike over, it's already leaking some oil on the top. Looking at the oil at the moment, can't help thinking could it just be the rocker gasket? But we'll have a closer look when the engine's out, but it is proper caked in oil. Right, seat tank and airbox. Tank will be relatively easy. One pipe going to the stop nozzle down the bottom, one bolt in the middle, two up the top, and apart from the breather pipe, I think that should be it. Let's have a look and see. Right, so we've removed our bolt from there, we've removed fastenings from the top, and we've removed the fuel line, and I think we're ready to go. So let's give it a lift and see what happens. And there we have it, the tank is off. Did forget two fasteners, which were on each side there and there, which fitted into the mouldings at the top. Took me a couple of seconds. And now airbox, and what we'll do is we'll stick a bit of WD-40 on the exhaust studs just to see if we can give them a little bit of help. And then it does raise an interesting question on nuts and bolts this old and haven't been removed in many years. Do I impact them off or do I use a breaker bar? I know what my feeling is on it. I'll show you shortly. Right, so this is where we're at. The tank is off, the air filter's off, the all the shrouds are off, and this is further than I've ever been before on this particular bike, so everything from now will be a little bit of a new experience. But let's crack on and see what happens next. Well, how did we get to this? Well, it was a little bit like this. This is where we're at. Looking into it, I'm going to have to disconnect the water pipes. I'm going to do that from the engine side rather than the radiator side and see what happens there. Space wise doesn't seem to be too bad. I think the exhaust is going to be the main challenge with those studs, but as we come around we go down, you can see that there's a mount in there, there's a mount in there, or well, I'm not sure if there's one at the top, doesn't actually look like it. And once the exhaust is off, I think we're good to go. I'm talking about taking the exhaust off, but oh yeah, we'll catch on that if I leave it. Yep. So they both will have to come off. Right, let's crack on. So exhaust is off and we're just ready to get on with the front bits. That main bracket I thought was going to be in the way of the exhaust actually looks like it's part of the engine rather than part of the frame, so I think that the engine actually will drop down with the headers in it, which will be very handy. So not going bad, been quite a quick process up to now. I know there's going to be some issues as we get further in, but at the moment okay. So we're going to disconnect the clutch now, start working our way around and just seeing what's holding it in before we start whipping out the main bolts. We've got the radiator off. That was a horrible experience. The liquid that came out was very clear, and I can't help smelling it, and it smells like stale urine, which really isn't very nice. And the worst thing is I can't stop smelling my fingers now, so I'm kind of hoping that they didn't overheat this bike somewhere in the middle of nowhere and then decide to fill it up, let's say personally, because it's horrible, very, very horrible. So we're going to remove this bar here. One of the main engine mounting bolts is through there. I have to take the gear lever off to gain access to the final drive. What I can see, there's 3 bolts that actually go through the engine that are holding it onto the frame, so we're not a million miles away, but there's still some electrical stuff to do, which I need to crack on with. And I did WD-40 the exhaust bolts just in case I do need to take those headers off, but they're not joined, so I could, worst case scenario is I can just take one off, but we'll see. Onwards and upwards. One thing I have just done, which I should have done right at the beginning, but I forgot, was to take the battery out. Always a good idea to do this before you start, especially when you start messing about with electrics. Last thing you want to do is set the bike on fire, especially with so much fuel around on the floor. So this will go on charge now, because the other pet hate of mine is getting all of the work done and then realising that you can't start the bike because the battery's flat. So we'll get on to that now. Right, I've just taken off the panel behind the gear shifter, and really can see the extent of what we're having to deal with here. A lot of this was hidden before, but as you can see, that old leak has just been, well, quite bad for quite a while. I think I'm lucky that the only sign of it I was getting was just the odd drip, because that looks quite major to me, and that's many years of built up grease, grime, that's going to have to all be removed. So this is where we are so far. We're around the other side of the bike. I've disconnected some of the electrics. I think on this side it is almost complete. Rotate sender off, just down here, and some of the throttle linkages, the throttle cable still in, and the choke cable, but it's getting close. Well, from what I can see, there's only a couple of bits left before we can take the engine out, but the one thing that is concerning me slightly is the final drive to the back wheel, and the fact it's a shaft. I've just had a look at a closer inspection, and it does look like it's going to be a bit of a pig. So I want to do a little bit of research, make sure that I'm not making work for myself with this. So that will be it for today. If you've liked what you've seen so far, or if you think that I've been doing it completely wrong, then say so in the comments, and any advice is always welcome. Like I said, it's been many years since I've taken an engine apart to this extent, and even though it's coming back slowly, you do wonder if there's an easier way often. So if you like what you see, please like and subscribe, and hopefully see you soon.